Hello, Chinook and Steelhead members. Bob Reese here with the Guides Forecast. Thanks for being subscribers. This is your forecast for tomorrow, September 3rd, Friday. It will be the last day for Chinook retention from Tongue Point to Warrior Rock. That fishery is actually on the fade anyway. We have an intensifying tide series, which makes it a little less productive up in the Tongue Point reach. So we're seeing a slowing fishery. It slowed down today from what it had been in previous days, and there has been more coho caught up there than Chinook. So you know, it's not a huge loss. Of course, any loss opportunity for Chinook this time of year, when there's so many of them coming back to the river system, really is a disappointment. The bigger blow will be upriver to from the Cowlitz and the Kalama. Those areas are really productive right now, and are going to see a disappointing drop off an opportunity just when it's starting to enter peak season right there. So it sounds like a good deal of the Thule take was around the mouth of the Cowlitz, and just a heavy increase in effort, as well as probably surprisingly good catch rates, has consumed up the Thule impacts for that reach of river. And then starting Monday, the 7th, is, maybe that's Tuesday the 7th. Anyway, starting on the 7th is when the fishery, 12:01 a.m. on the 7th, is when the fishery from Warrior Rock up to Bonneville Dam will also close to the retention of Chinook. So we'll go into more detail of that as we're giving these almost daily updates and forecasts. But it's going to be a painful closure. But maybe once some of the Thule stock fish get through the system, we'll see some reopening opportunities that can happen once we know we have some acceptable escapement to the spawning grounds for that Thule strain of Chinook. So back to the forecast for the lower river. Anglers will be still somewhat challenged as to whether to go upstream to Tongue Point to take advantage of the last day of Chinook and some decent coho fishing. There has been some activity up there in the last part of outgoing tide. We're going to start seeing low tides. Today was for a positive side, 0.4 of a low tide. And we'll have a pretty strong outgoing tide from daybreak. So I wouldn't anticipate any really good fishing from the get-go. But once that tide starts to slow around 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, that's when we could start to see some activity, both in the lower river on the red line from buoy 20 to buoy 14 and on to buoy 12. On the Washington side, Chinook wing jetties, there should be some activity close to low slack. Buoy 11 to buoy 10 slide was quite productive today on that last part of outgoing tide, and that should also be the case tomorrow. Still some Chinooks being caught and released in that area. Coho as well. There was some boats that had some pretty good activity, but not a lot of keepers in those areas, particularly around buoy 11 this morning. So that should continue to be the case. Up above Tongue Point, same thing. From Miller Island on down, the last part outgoing tide, that seems to be where some of the best biters are along Rice Island. And there have been periods of good bites. It seems more so on the first part of incoming tide around buoy 44, which is the westerly deadline for that Tongue Point to Warrior Rock reach of the river. So that should again present itself. But again, intensifying tides seem to have an impact on catch rates in that reach of the river. So the Washington side has been, above the bridge, has been a bit of a disappointment. We're not marking a lot of fish up there. There is an incredible amount of sea lion and harbor seal activity up there. Hard to say, hard to speculate if that's the reason why fish aren't congregating on that side as much as they have been. There was a good bite at the sawdust pile. One of my guide friends spent quite a bit of time at the sawdust pile today, and got into some jacks that they let go, some wild coho, and a couple of really nice keeper hatchery coho, one that went probably better than 13 or 14 pounds. So they're, check those spots. Some people may be actually releasing hatchery coho in the Chinook zone. This is just speculation, but check that gum line to make sure that you have a coho, most importantly, before you take a swing on it. There's just some exceptional coho in the estuary right now. Numerous fish over 12 or 13 pounds have been reported recently. I have yet to catch one probably better than 12 pounds, but some quality fish, and they're only going to get bigger. So that's the story. Take advantage of the last part of the outgoing tide. The first part of incoming tide today at buoy 10 produced a few fish at the very beginning. I waited and waited for the rip to come through, and it never did come through on a 6-foot tide, not, till noon anyway. Maybe it came in later, but, until we get some really stronger tides in, which the tides are building over the course of the weekend and into next week, we may not see any spectacular buoy 10 bites there at the line, but, it's going to come. And I think with the drop-off in ocean effort, because the ocean is now closed to salmon fishing, we're going to see, if indeed this coho run comes to fruition, going to see some spectacular bites at buoy 10 when those tides do improve. And then, that coho inundation of the estuary should happen all the way up to the bridge once we see some improving tides over the weekend. So, other than that, it's kind of a slow incoming tide bite. Most people, there was some activity late in the afternoon, about midway through the incoming tide up at Tongue Point. Some more Chinook caught and coho caught. But then, by the time it got close to high tide, the northwest wind had really kicked in and started beating people up pretty bad. Certainly not a great place to be on an outgoing tide with a strong northwest wind. I haven't checked the wind forecast for tomorrow, but that's the way the weather pattern's been set up for a good part of the week. Strong northwest afternoon winds. Thankfully, most of the day it's going with the incoming tide and not bucking against it. But be careful as you do fish late. There has been some treacherous river conditions here with those two opposing forces going against each other. So stay safe out there. We'll report back next week, tomorrow, hopefully. And, we're coming into a big weekend. I think, especially with the closures from the Tongue Point to Warrior Rock reach, we may see somewhat of a significant increase in effort pursuing hatchery coho down in the estuary. Hopefully the coho come through for us. We're expected to catch 80,000 coho in the river in the buoy 10 fishery. We had a quota of 42 or 44,000 in the north of Falcon fishery. So if things go the way as predicted, and that's always a roll of the dice, we have a lot of good coho fishing yet to go in the estuary, so let's hope they show on this tide series. Stay safe, take care. Folks, I just wanted to add some details about the upriver fishery upstream of Tongue Point, and actually in the Kalama and Cowlitz area, Warrior Rock area. Those fisheries, as you heard me allude to, are producing really good catches right now. Mostly because of the soft tide series, the trollers are doing much better than the wobbler anglers, and that's just going to be the way it is for these coming off of this soft tide exchange. And then incoming tide and high tide tend to produce the best catches for those trollers, and a lot of folks are sticking with the 360 rotating flashers, the pro trolls, the super baits, the mini plug cuts, Brad plug cuts. Those are all producing quite consistently. And of course, the size 3.5 spinners are playing their part in those fisheries as well. So, it's a bit of a no-brainer fishery. There's still certainly intricacies to it and some more consistent anglers than others, but for the most part, it's going to be a trolling show. It's going to be a pro troll or 360 flasher show, and you know, break out the hardware, whether it's super baits, of course, spin fish. I've worked with a lot this season. I've been impressed with the results there. Super baits and Brad's plug cuts are all strong options, and I've had good luck just running straight bait, hole rigged, red label herring, green label herring behind the flasher. You know, not something people are doing on a very consistent basis yet. Will still produce good results over the course of a day's fishing. So hopefully you have some rods to work with to see what's working the best out there. But you know, we're in a last hurrah here for the last 3-4 days, depending on the river reach you're in, to produce results in this fishery. So take advantage of that. There's quality upriver brights in these fisheries mixed in with some tules, and hopefully we'll get to take advantage of that again when we get some of these tules through the systems. There's a lot of great Chinook fishing yet to happen. Above Bonneville and above the Dalles dams, those fisheries should be getting underway. Fish passage is getting quite impressive at Bonneville, and a lot of fish coming through. A lot of fish that haven't seen a lot of sport, effort, or equipment up there in those upper impoundments, and you know, those fisheries are really going to start kicking out here and will remain open above Bonneville Dam. So, you know, good time to learn those fisheries and take advantage of them. Pay attention to the regulations. Be cognizant of any steelhead you may catch up there. They have to be carefully handled and in most cases released. So, yeah, we're not going to be, I don't anticipate we'll be closed off for the rest of the season for Chinook opportunity below Bonneville Dam, but only time will tell. Who knows the way these fisheries are performing, how that'll go. But a lot of disappointed anglers with the run we're having this year, and the over harvest, frankly, of the Thule strain salmon. So again, be safe out there. A lot of ship traffic coming up and down the river, a lot of horn honking going on, even some citations being handed out. So use common sense, be safe. Good luck.